Good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Metaworld News. It is the 29th of January, current dateline, so to speak, of the year 2017. You didn't really need to know that, did you? Well, you will if you ever look at this in the distant future. We're bringing you news here today on the state of the metaverse. This is the immersive interactive spaces online and a lot of it to do with the hypergrid and other social worlds. And it's been a busy week for the news, and in fact, we even have a little bit of news from the previous week to catch up on. A lot of the news we're discussing will be discussed further depth shortly after this program on our other program called the In-World Review, so do stay tuned for that as well. I'm actually going to hand straight over to, I'm Mal Burns, by the way, in case you don't know. And the giggling voice you can hear beside me is none other than Maria Korolov from Hypergrid Business. And I'm just going to hand it straight over to her for all the headline Hypergrid news. So take it away, Maria.
Thanks, Mel. You're right. It has been a busy 2 weeks. Today, I'm going to go over what's been happening with some grid migrations, with switching hosting companies, some business models. We're going to talk about a survey we did about the favorite OpenSim viewers in OpenSim. And we're going to talk about the stats report that came out. So if you can pull up the first slide, Mel.
Sure
David
thing.
Karuki, one of our freelancers, did the stats report for us this month. And this is the first time that he's done the stats report. And this is our first month trying to get the stats in a completely automated way instead of doing like manual collection of the data from everywhere. So a little bit, so it might have gotten up a little bit higher than it did if we had done it manually and like we did before. And hopefully by next month, it'll be totally automated. And so that we can improve this a little bit further. We had an increase of several hundred active users. We had more regions, more registered users, nice bright start to 2017. In-Worlds was the most popular grid again, and we've expanded our popular grid list to the top 25 most popular grids, so that if you're looking to discover new grids and check out where everyone is going, you now have a few more places that are on that list that we are going to be tracking. And we posted more data from the Kitely market. They're now at a record high 165 grids that they're delivering content to. And they've had more than nearly 12,000 items now on that marketplace. So if you want to buy legal licensed content for OpenSim and get it delivered to yourself on almost any grid out there, this is the place to go. A couple of grids had 7-year anniversaries. That includes Craft, which is based in Italy, and Arena's World, which is a German language grid. They're two of the oldest grids in OpenSim, and they held parties this month to celebrate this. We had a couple of new grids, not too many. I think only one finally wound up listing, and several that were listed as suspended. So if you want to check out the stats, check out all the grids that have been mentioned, check that out, and of course send out any news items and stuff for the next stats report, which will be coming out in 2 weeks. Then the next slide up, if you can pull that up, Mal. We did a survey of the most popular viewers in OpenSim, and the most popular one was Firestorm, with more than half of the people using it. I am one of those people using Firestorm. I like the fact that I can log into both Second Life and OpenSim with it, that it saves all my stuff, and I've had zero problems with it. I really like it and enjoy it. I love the customizations. A lot of people said the same thing. Singularity was in second place with a little over a quarter of all users, followed by Alchemy. We've also asked people about what other viewers they've tried, and that's the next slide up, Mal. And pretty much 98% of the people had, 96% of the people had tried Firestorm and 89% has tried Singularity. 61% have tried Imprudence, although fewer than 5% of them are still using it, because it's one of the viewers that kind of is faded in popularity as we switch to Mesh.
In fact, I think the next one, Kakua, is actually the descendant of Imprudence, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. If you look to the next slide, I asked people about what they liked and what they wanted to fix in OpenSim. So the things that they liked was being able to export and import content and do hypergrid teleports and, fiddle with the user interface and do memory management and teleport and build over 8,096 meters. But there were a lot more things they wanted to fix. The single biggest issue people wanted to fix was to have a standardized OpenSim version of the SL URLs. This is the web link that you would give to people, and they would click on it, and it would activate the in-world region to teleport to. So every viewer does this differently, and it's been done differently by various versions of OpenSim. So this is something that's very much in flux and very much wanted by a lot of people. More than 55% of people wanted this. And then the next most wanted fix was to have the unknown user problem fixed at 51%. And ironically, I'm here with not a new avatar, because I've had this avatar for a long time, but it's definitely new to the in-world review. It's my OS Grid avatar. And I first showed up as an unknown user when I teleported it.
You still are, if you must know.
I still am. So yeah, people don't like that. People don't like that. They want to get these things fixed. They also want to see special features just for OpenSim. They want the address bar to show the full correct hypergrid address, which would be super useful now that we're traveling all these different grids. You want to know where you are. I certainly lose track of where I am, especially if I go through gates or click on teleport links. Like, who knows where you end up? So that's something that people would want. And people also wanted to take out some of the Second Life specific options, like currency purchases, which is kind of annoying. You click on that and you get the Second Life option, and you're on some OS grid. And people wanted to have an easy to use beginner mode, better documentation, and support for multiple monitors. Now let's move on to.
I'm actually laughing at the one you left out. A few people seem to want a built-in post stand. I think there is one in most viewers, but never mind.
Yeah, I don't know why they picked it. I have no idea if there's something specific that they're looking for. I think you can ask them in the comments and get some dialogue going that way. I just do the survey. People say things. I print them.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay.
So, now, the next big set of stories had to do with dream worlds. Apparently, all these grids have been moving to dream worlds and leaving AviWorlds, or one of the successor AviWorlds companies. We talked about this before. And what AviWorlds did was, I think the last time we talked about this, they decided to run their grid. Alex decided to run the whole grid out of his garage and give away 1,000 free regions to everybody. So there was a lot of skepticism about this. And one of the things that people said in the comments to his announcement was, what about like power supplies and power surges and stuff? That's something that's kind of hard to deal with in a garage, but like professional data centers have all this organized. Well, a power surge hit Alex's garage. It wiped out his servers, destroyed the hardware, and brought down the grid.
You gotta feel sorry. Wow. Really gotta feel sorry for this guy, because I mean, there are problems I think he has that are of his own making, but I think the guy suffers some real bad luck as well.
Yes. And you know how he always blames somebody else for the problems?
Oh, but this
time he blamed the gods. He said everything was running beautifully until the gods decided to surge my place. He said on the record in a quote, what else is next? An alien cow comes from planet Moo and takes my server away?
Who knows?
Well, here's what he decided to do. He decided to go to DigiWorlds, and that was 2 days ago. He let me know. Now, everybody has been moving to DigiWorlds. DigiWorlds doesn't just run the DigiWorlds grid. They also provide grid hosting to other grid owners. So they will do all the tech stuff for you. All you have to do is build a community and do the fun stuff. And they take care of all the backups, all the power surges, all the database issues, the upgrades, the tech support, all the stuff, all the horrible, annoying stuff they do, and you just do the fun stuff and take in the money. Now, you might have to pay a little bit, charge a little bit extra for your regions because you're paying for all that tech stuff that they do. But their prices seem to be really, really reasonable, and a lot of people like it. And it comes with a lot of stuff, and they will do your management panels, the restarts for the users, the backups. So much stuff just comes with it for free, including the currency, the groups, like a million things that you need if you're running a commercial grid. They just do it for you, and you don't have to worry about any of it, and their reputation is excellent. They came in second in my hosting survey this year after Dreamland Metaverse. And then there's a few hosting companies that are offering these kind of services, but DigiWorlds has really been making a name for themselves this last couple of months. So that is nice to see. Nice to see that happening, and people focusing on what they do best, and other people stepping in and taking care of the infrastructure for them. I think it bodes really well for the future of OpenSIM to have well-known, reliable providers like this doing that. And hopefully that means that AviWorlds won't crash again. There's no guarantee it won't implode for other reasons. This is their 10th time trying to do a grid, not counting temporary outages.
Well, maybe this is the start of a completely different string for the yo-yo, so it won't bounce. Thank you, Alex. You get the joke.
Yes. Now, the other big story this week was the situation with A-Life Virtual and 62 stolen OR files. So this is a complicated story with lots of moving pieces to it. But basically, there were two big problems. One problem is that last summer, an AviWorlds employee, yes, every scandal eventually leads back to AviWorlds, an AviWorlds employee stole a bunch of region files belonging to their grid hosting companies. And he posted them on a notorious online file sharing site. So 62 OR files. This is a region file that is all the stuff on the region, all the objects, and all the scripts in those objects. So this is, really kind of a thing that you really want to be careful about distributing, and you really want to be careful about the license terms and whose content it is. So anyway, he just grabbed them up, he posted them, and allegedly he did this because he was mad at the grid owners, and he wanted to do something nasty to them. Allegedly. Do not sue me. This is all alleged.
Yes.
None of this has been adjudicated in the courts.
It's an alternative fact, let's face it.
Well, we don't know yet if it's a fact or an alternative fact, So we're still in that, is the cat alive or dead kind of situation.
Right.
So that's half of the story, and that was a big part of it. And these region files have been popping up on, regions here and there as people who are not particularly law abiding, get them from this file sharing site and upload them to grids. So now,
I suspect this is something we're going to discuss further when we get to the in World Review later, along with
hopefully
along
not.
with. Oh, all right. Oh, hopefully not. She
I
said.
want to.
I would add actually. Before we came on air, well, it's about an hour before we came on air, I got a message from Roddy Mackey, who's the CEO of Great Canadian Grid, which of course is where we're based here, and he actually pointed to your post on this matter, but he was also mailing the whole grid here to remind people that they don't. Canada Grid does not allow users to upload OAL files. That is actually policy, simply because they can't necessarily filter what you're bringing up in an AOL file.
Exactly.
So rather than risk you bringing something with illegal content in it, they don't let you bring up. You can save backups of your own OALs, but you can't import one.
What Simple. Some grids do is they have like a medium option where they can upload an OR file for you from a reputable source. Like if you want a Linda Kelly file or something from Outworlds where the content is checked and properly licensed and vetted, some grids will do that for you.
Well, I did notice, for example, in I think it was during this week, you will obviously be talking about Outworlds and stuff in a bit. So I was hoping to get third on today, but no reply. But in the latest upgrade to the Outworlds, offline local simulator you can download and run, he actually sent a message out advertising new OR files available, but it was prefixed via the very obvious statements. I have negotiated with, and I must admit I forget who it was, to purchase some extra OR files so I can add these to your options. And it was straight to the point. I have negotiated with, and I have purchased the rights to. And then he told us what the OAL files were. So it wasn't like, hey, great, lots of nicked OAL files you can now put in the local computer. So that's the way to go. Polite.
We will be following this story over the course of the week now. So if we can get a guest next weekend to talk about this, that would be great. Sure. And more news is coming in as we speak that I can't talk about it just yet because it's still going in the back and forth, sausage being made kind of phase of journalism.
If it's not embargoed, it's bubbling, bubbling under.
It's bubbling, yes. Now let's talk about the other flip side of this. So 62 OR files allegedly stolen, distributed out there, and I can confirm that they're being distributed because I actually went to the pirate site and I pulled up that listing. And it is, in fact, there. So as of 2 days ago when I wrote the story, those files were still up there. And a lot of people are working to get them taken down, and they're filing takedown requests, they're dealing with the file sharing site, and so forth. So that stuff, that's one side of it. Then there's the other side of it. One of the biggest violators, allegedly, in this whole big mess was a grid called A-Life Virtual Grid, which boasts of having more than 1,000 active monthly users. But their statistics from other sources do not support that. And I have not been publishing their stats for about a year because of problems with their stats that they have never been able to address to me. So I'm coming into this a little bit wary of what this grid is doing. Then several content creators have visited that grid over this past several days, and they found their content taken without permission. In some cases, this was content that had never been distributed at all and posted on the grid under the owner's name of the guy who owns the grid. So this wasn't like a random resident uploading random infringing stuff. That happens on every grid. All you can do is look out for it and take it down when it shows up. Because people be people and they'll do crazy stuff. These items were under the name of the owner of the grid. And so this was a great deal of concern to people. One of those items in particular was a set of vending machines from a company called Hyperica. So obviously they don't distribute their vending machines. They're used, through their vending network. You don't want to give away the vending machine to somebody else because they can fiddle with the scripts and do other nasty stuff to it, sabotage the sales process. Fortunately, possibly due to the fact that A-Life Virtual has no visitors, people weren't, selling stuff through these machines, the stolen content that they were, on the grid. So he looked it up, and there was no records of actual transactions going through the system. So that's like one piece of good news. But that's a clear sign that something really bad was going on. How could they steal these machines and their scripts? You can't copy bot something like that. And that's when it was discovered that entire region files had been stolen and distributed. In addition to that, content that was not in region files also showed up. For example, the owner of the DigiWorlds grid, Terry Ford, told me that individual pieces of content from creators on that grid, which is not allowed to leave that grid, has popped up on A-Life. And for that takes somebody deliberately copy-botting those things and bringing them over. So the problems have been found with this content on several different grids, more than a dozen grids at last count from what I'm hearing, and I'm looking for the final data on all that. And takedown notices have been sent by various creators and grid owners and everybody involved to everybody else. So we'll see how all that shakes out. But the reason why A-Life Virtual was specifically singled out in the story is because they had both kinds of problems to a very large extent, and it was all under the name of the owner of the grid. So we contacted the owner of the grid, David Karuki, worked on the story. He did a fantastic job. He contacted everybody involved, and he got a quote from the owner of the grid. And he said that he immediately took down the servers. He took down all these regions, offending regions. He's reviewing all the content. And last we heard from him, he originally said it was going to take him a couple of months to review everything. He now says he's going to be able to do it in a week, either because it turned out to be an easier problem to fix than he thought, or because all of this attention is really making him speed up. So, so that's something that we are very carefully watching. We're watching the stats. We're following up to make sure this content does get taken down. And it's not just them, but they were the worst case scenario, and they have responded. They have taken it down. So this the biggest example of this in OpenSim has been cleared up, and I'm actually happy to see how well the community has pulled together on this, and how promptly people. I mean, it just took a couple of days for people to to find this out, to file the notices, and for the grid to respond and say they're fixing things. So overall, I'd say it's a good example of the community policing itself and cleaning things up when things are discovered. And now, of course, all the other grid owners, as you mentioned here in Great Canadian Grid, Roddy as well, is taking a look at this and everywhere else to make sure that they don't have copies of the stolen files on their grids that maybe they weren't being aware of, because now that they know, they're checking. And they're making sure the residents know what the terms of service are, that you don't do this, we don't tolerate it, here's what we're going to do if it happens, and here's what we're going to do if it happens again, So now people
well, I'm just thinking this is really an ongoing conversation, so we'll probably bring, in terms of news, I think we'll probably bring more of this later. I actually was rather keen to move on and actually announce some news for you, and so that you can answer it as the interviewee sort of thing. Well, the big news this week is that a certain site called Hyperica, which is both a website and a region on the hypergrid, is owned by a certain you and has been sold this week to Outworlds, namely Fred Fredericks, as we know him. And that is news. I want to hear more about that, although I'm sure we're going to discuss it on the in World Review shortly. So tell me about that as a news item, please.
So as the basic outline what's going to happen is the website will continue, the grid will continue, the destination guide that 10,000 people use in their viewers to travel around the hypergrid, that will continue. A lot of grids have that set up so that the default destination guide in the viewer is the Hyperica destination guide. And that was one of the things I was very much concerned about when deciding to shut down Hyperica earlier this month. Several people came to me offering to take it over one way or the other, but Fred Beckerson from Outworlds, because he wanted to keep everything going and improve on it, that seemed like the best thing for the community, for the site, for the content. And I was very, very happy to accept his offer. Now, I also one final note about the content sharing thing is that some people out there, and this came up in the comments and the emails to me, think that the US DMCA only applies in the US and that it's the government's power to shut down sites that share content. It is, in fact, the opposite of that. The DMCA protects websites against lawsuits. So there are other laws, copyright laws and patent law, all sorts of other laws that will let people sue your site or grid and shut it down. But what the DMCA does is if you have a file sharing site or a grid where people upload content and you can't control what they're doing every minute of every day, this protects you against being sued by every content creator every time one of your users uploads something bad. Because otherwise, every single social media site and magazine with comments and every grid would be closed almost instantly by a flood of lawsuits. Yeah. The DMCA protects sites against lawsuits by Americans. We like to sue. So if you pay $100 to the U.S. Copyright Office, then no matter where you are in the world, if you take down content when you hear about it, then you are protected against lawsuits by Americans. So Kitely, for example, which is based in Israel, is registered with the U.S. Copyright Office. They paid $100. And as long as they're good corporate citizens and take down content if it infringes, do the right stuff, they will continue to be protected from lawsuits. Other countries have similar laws on their books. They're called different things because every country calls their laws something else. Okay. But they are all extremely similar. If you take down content, you're protected from lawsuits. If you stop taking down content or try to cheat your way around it, then all this law does is it says, okay, I give up, fine, people can go ahead and sue you. That is the function of these laws. It is not the government stepping in and shutting down your site. The government is actually stepping in and protecting every random Joe Schmo on the planet from suing you. So this is very, very important for grids. You have to take down infringing content promptly. Make it easy for people to file takedown requests if they are legitimate content creators. And if you're particularly worried about being sued by Americans, because either you have American residents or users, or you have content from American creators, then pay the $100. It's a one-time fee. You're registered with the U.S. Copyright Office. You have safe harbor from U.S. lawsuits. So a very good thing to have. I strongly urge every commercial grid that wants to have like a solid business footing to do this. As I mentioned, Kitely has done this, DigiWorlds has done this, a lot of grids have done this because they want to be have a good basic insurance policy against lawsuits.
Okay, good words of advice there. So what else?
and so that rounds me up for the top news from the OpenSim community for the past 2 weeks.
Okay, well, wonderful, wonderful. We could carry on here. Okay, I've got my slides behind us in a mixed up order again today. Don't ask me why, but over in the corner here, we of course have got James Out Loud. He's our cameraman too, but hi there, James. Any news on the developers front this week?
Yeah, just a real quick bit of news. Again, I attended the meeting on Tuesday, which is open office hours for anyone who wants to talk about development of Open Simulator. Great attendance, 11 folks showed up, and there's a little bit of chat, interesting, Maria, about a lot of people still using Firestorm. And that I think reflects the statistics that you had gathered. We caught up a little bit about the VAR question from last week, and actually someone had visited a grid where two different size VARs were next to each other, and the suggestion was it's really not a server issue with Open Simulator, it's really a viewer issue, which so many things, it's trying to figure out which part of the equation the problem lies up. But anyway, it still seems like something possible. Then a lot of the meeting was talking about the physics engines and how to really clarifying in the code which physics engines are being used. And the discussion, people actually started digging into the code repository and kind of going, oh, I don't know if that should be there. I don't know if that should be there. So like a lot of questions, it opens up a lot more questions. Still, the group is very vibrant, and it's great to see the activity there. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, James, for that.
Yep.
Right, Hypergrid Roundup I'm on. Am I? Yes. Well, I've changed screens anyway. Okay. Well, obviously, we had Hypergrid Safari during the course of the week. It's not news; it happens every week. But if you're free at noon Pacific time on Wednesdays, it's a great place to go and go on journeys and hang out with the crowd. And they meet as a region called HG Safari on Franco Grid, if you want a hyper grid over there. Not this coming Wednesday, but the Wednesday after, we'll actually be meeting here for a special Canadian hypergrid. So I know that in advance, although I haven't a clue where they're going this week. It's normally one of these things that pops up at the last minute, a bit like our shows, really. So that's that. In other news, not strictly hypergrid news, but other news, we're not really covering the greater range of VR here these days, except for social worlds. But just a couple of things to note. Engadget, for example, reported this week about a VR out-of-body experience that could help, with fear of death. And there was another similar example, I haven't got the exact link handy, where they were talking about hypergrid indeed, VR, or virtual environments helping with, I think they actually specify Second Life on this one, oddly enough, help with, what's it called? I've got it, fear of heights, it's not agoraphobia. It's the one where
acrophobia.
Acrophobia, yeah. Well, I look over the edge of a cliff and, before I even approach it, I'm on my belly and I really don't want to look over the edge because I get dizzy. Oh, yeah. Well, apparently, the strange physics that exist in virtual worlds are actually it can be made to help people overcome this fear, because no harm is going to come to them even if they do get dizzy and fall or think they're falling. And Ars Technica website had a welcome to the world of trolling in virtual reality post that was about 4 days ago. And, this is a generic kind of thing that relates to not just, new fancy VR technology, but particularly in social worlds as well. After all, trolls are usually honing in on people, and that's where the people are. VR is gaining ground in academia and industry and stuff. A very odd Hamlet Orr at New World Notes, which was really used to be a Second Life blog, and still is to a great extent. He's moved out into a bit of VR coverage and stuff too, although not OpenSync coverage. But he did have an interesting article. It's filed here under net neutrality. which was 3 days ago, and the headline was Trump-appointed FCC head poses direct threat to Second Life and other virtual worlds/online games. And it's not a particularly comprehensive piece. Hamlet doesn't really go in for long pieces, but basically he notes that some legislation in the States, or particularly people behind it, could be, when it comes to net neutrality, denial and stuff like that, could be actually posing what could eventually be a direct threat to Second Life and other worlds, and by extension OpenSim, although of course OpenSim is very much an international affair, thank goodness. So what happens in America is not going to necessarily affect OpenSim as the whole hypergrid. But interesting thoughts. Maybe we'll discuss those later. And Elle magazine, which is a woman's magazine, an all-female news crew, braving tear gas to fight. They talk about a women's march and everything else in Washington, but they had an article called "Can Virtual Reality Fight Fake News?" And wonder about that. An interesting post at CNET, which I think is relevant to us. The future is coming, but I can't see it. This was a very interesting post indeed, because it was somebody who is really keen, rather like me, I guess, on virtual worlds and their possibility. But he wears glasses. It's very simple. And he was writing about the absolute frustrations of these new headsets and things coming out, and even things that are sometimes just on your screen. If you have forms of myopia and things, as a lot of older people do as well, or develop, you have to wear reading glasses and various kinds of glasses to see things. And, everybody's going on about these wonderful immersive environments, which are principally visual things, and maybe they aren't really paying much attention to the hundreds and thousands of people who actually have to wear glasses and aren't necessarily going to find it easy to slot your glasses into a headset or whatever. So that was a kind of interesting take they took there. And the Daydream application platform, that is Google's thing that goes with their not cardboard but their Daydream headset for phones. They've opened that to app submissions from everybody, and they've also published what they call quality requirements for those apps. And something that I rather liked yesterday was Virtual Reality Times, or oneword.com, has a look into the world's first VR comic. It's something called Magnetique, where every panel in the comic is its own individual 360 environment. So you can walk, as you're reading a comic book, you basically explore each frame before moving on to the next frame. And I thought that was a rather nice idea, being an old comics fan that I am. Anyway, that's just a few little add-ons for the end there to show that we are still in contact with the rest of the scene, so to speak. And that's it, I think, for this week's Metaworld News. So we try and keep this as short and to the point as possible, but we did have quite a lot to cover this week, as you gathered. We'll be going off air now, but if you're watching us live, do hang around, because we'll be taking a short break, and then we'll be coming live again with our other program, the In-World Review, where we'll certainly be discussing more with Maria about the changes to Hyperica and anything else that comes up, maybe inspired by the stuff you've been hearing about on this very news program. So if you're around, stay tuned, and we'll see you for that. If not, we'll be back around this time next week with the latest news bulletin once again for you. So it's bye from Maria, bye from me, and bye for James, and we'll see you anon.